Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I am really excited to talk to you today about this because this episode is something that I have struggled with, my clients have struggled with, I think many people, whether or not they struggle with emotional eating, body image. I think this is kind of a pervasive topic amongst humanity. And we're going to talk today about negative self-talk. And negative self-talk, it's almost automatic. And it's really something that is almost normalized as something that we just do. And we don't realize that it titrates over time. And negative self-talk is something that unless we actively decide to, stop negative self-talk or actively try to reframe negative self-talk, it is something that almost like a rotten, like a rotten tooth. It just continues to wreak havoc on our self-esteem, our self-worth throughout our whole life. And negative self-talk is often built upon thoughts and beliefs that we internalize and develop at a very young age. And it can be learned in it can come in from different areas, right? So if we are internalizing negative self-talk as a young age, it's likely that we observed modeling of that negative self-talk. So that means that we might have seen our caregivers speak to themselves, speak to others, have conversations with other adults in ways that were self-critical or in ways that represented their belief system of the world, that they might see the world in a negative light. They might see the world in a way that feels difficult or hard, or the world is against us, or the world is going to reject us. So these are certain narratives and belief systems that even as young kids, we almost, because kids are like a sponge, we just kind of absorb and they get installed into our cells and they just kind of grow and grow and grow unless we take our agency back and we actively try to change them. And the thing about negative self-talk is that it's so painful because not only does it reinforce a sense of unworthiness, which creates internal anxiety, what happens as we become adults is that ends up causing us to create identities that keep us closed off from the beauty of living because we're afraid to truly show who we are to the world, and we're afraid to be fully expressed, and we're afraid to give and receive love from a place of trust and from a place where we actually believe that people are going to value us. And what happens is, like I said before, over time, it becomes an ingrained autopilot, right? It becomes an ingrained narrative. It almost becomes something that we think is fact because it's like a path that we walk every day. These negative self-talk, negative self-beliefs, negative self-affirmations, and it becomes etched over and over in our minds that it really becomes a subconscious thought process on a repetitive loop almost. And I want to share a personal story with you about negative self-talk and my experience with negative self-talk. And it's something that I only recently in the last couple of years really started to open up about, but I think, with you guys, I'm going to share. I definitely want to be more open on the podcast and, in this type of content. I want to be able to normalize certain things and really just have you understand that I do this work because I've really been there and because I've really experienced a lot of this stuff, and a lot of what I teach and a lot of what I share comes from that. And for me, negative self-talk is still a brain pattern that I have to practice almost on the daily to overcome. And it started for me at a young age when I was actually bullied pretty badly by classmates in junior high school. um, I was made fun of for my body, my personality, my talents. I heard people said I was like trying too hard. I was doing all these things. I had an ego. My body was made fun of. And it created a belief system that I wasn't good enough and that I needed to actually hide parts of myself to be liked. I actually had to close off. I had to hide parts of myself. And in tandem, there was also a high value placed on image in my upbringing, in the culture I was in the neighborhood I was in. There was a lot of value placed on image. I think it was also the times, like the 90s, 2000s, right? It was like Atkins, Friends, right? Like Jennifer Aniston. And, everyone, there's a lot of focus on body and fitness and thinness and all this stuff. And this value um, bred a lot of self criticism and insecurity. And I was often privy to, more adult women than me speaking negatively about their appearance. I'd hear them obsessing over food and directly associating their eating choices to their body love, to their body confidence, to the way that they believe their body to be good or not good, so to speak, which led me to feeling really confused about how to feel in my own body and how to relate to food and my self-esteem from a place of trust and worth. So, for example, because of the subconscious belief systems that I had about myself from the negative self talk that I internalized and observed, I spent 15 years from my late teens to my early 30s in an abusive relationship with food and my body, where I was literally on every diet, tried every exercise trend. I mean, I even tried like diet pills, whatever that was, like ephedrine, whatever it was in the early 2000s for like literally a hot second. Um, and even with all of that, I actually was the heaviest I ever was in my life at almost 150 pounds on my 5'1" frame when I was in my early 20s. So I'm a pretty petite person, um and I was at the highest weight in my early 20s, like ever, as I was doing all these things, as all my mental energy was going towards obsessing over food, trying to hack the latest diet trend, trying Atkins, trying this, um, trying this exercise, just constantly, just my life was engulfed with this. And it took me years and years to untangle myself from the negative self talk and the confusion that I had in relation to my weight, my eating choices, and actually develop a value system around my self image and my self esteem and my self worth that is in alignment with who I am as an adult woman and what I know to be true for me. And what was true for me when I got really honest with myself was that, and this was hard to kind of accept, and I spent a bunch of years probably rejecting this truth, and it kept me stuck probably for longer than I needed to be, most likely. But what was true for me was that when I got really honest with myself, what came to light was that I didn't like being at 150 pounds, right? Not because there's anything wrong with it, right? You can be someone at 5'1", 150 pounds. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying that that everyone should want to lose the weight. But for me, I realized that I did, and I wanted to, because when I had this weight, what the weight represented for me was it made me want to hide from the world. And it was almost like it was the trauma of the bullying from when I was younger, right? It was like, I made this connection, and I wanted to lose the weight because I realized that I was hiding. And the weight kept me from being me. It kept me from experimenting with style because I hated how I looked in the mirror. So I had to pretend like I didn't like fashion, because if I liked fashion, um, and then I went to a store and tried on something that was fashionable and it didn't look good on me, then I'd have to deal with that. So I just would say, fashion's dumb. So I had all these, I kind of made up all of these other beliefs to cover up for the fact that the truth was that I really did like fashion. But that would mean that I like fashion when I feel good in my clothes, and I want to embody that fashion, and I want to also feel good in my body and like how I feel in the clothes I'm wearing and in the size that I'm wearing. And that's the truth. And it also kept me from taking risks in my career because I projected my own self-judgment onto others and felt judged by them. So I had my own internalized self-judgment that, I looked bad. I was coming, I had all this negative self-talk, like, oh, I look gross, like I'm not attractive enough for this, or I had a lot of this negative self-talk. I was judging myself and I felt judged by them. But it was my own internalized self-judgment. And it kept me from receiving love romantically because I was projecting my own internalized self-rejection of myself and of my true desires and wants onto potential partners. And I would either get that evidence confirmed by getting rejected, usually by somebody who wasn't treating me well because I wasn't treating myself well and I wasn't being honest with myself. Or I just wouldn't even put myself out there at all. So self-rejection isn't just from self-rejection isn't just rejecting how you look in the now. Self-rejection is actually rejecting your true wants. And so I had to accept that I truly wanted to lose the weight because of all of these reasons, right? Because it was covering up my ability to live in the world as my true self and just live lightly and freely and with fluidity. And when I was living this way, in this narrow way, living small and hiding, I felt really lonely. I felt, really a lot of heaviness, and it made me more focused on food and it made me more focused on weight. It didn't do anything positive for me. It was a vicious loop that I knew would only end when I developed a true sense of my own identity and anchored that with my own beliefs, behaviors, and standards. And what that looked like for me, and I just touched on this before, was accepting that I needed to be at a weight that when I put my clothing on, it felt easy. That when I put my clothing on, I love how I look. And that what I'm wearing accentuates my personality. It's not that I'm more worthy now at a lower weight. I already was worthy before. It's just that it's about knowing myself and what I need to let myself feel secure and confident to be my fully expressed self and show up in the world as her. And that is my responsibility. And that is something that, I needed to do because I already knew that I was worthy somewhere deep down, but it was covered up by all the rest. And so I was just like, I need to take away the rest. And what that looked like for me was also never being on a diet or a version of a diet ever again. I eat whatever I want and I don't spend an ounce of brain power on calculations, logging, tracking, or whatnot. At this point in my life and for the last decade, over a decade, every action I take with my eating and my physical activity, exercise, comes from a place of pure intuition and authentic intention. I don't do anything because it's what I should do. I don't do anything because I'm supposed to log this. I'm supposed to eat this much because this is what this program tells me I should do. I don't subscribe to that. And this is where I am now. And I'm at a weight where I feel empowered completely with no hangups about food at all. And my negative self-talk that used to drive the car of my life is now securely fastened in the back seat. Securely fastened in the back seat. Now, this isn't to say that I don't have weight fluctuations now and then, but I'm okay with those weight fluctuations. And that's also a success, to get to a place where you know what your fluctuation weights are, and that's fine. Right? And I'm not going to say that my negative self-talk never acts up, because she does. This is something that it's a continuous practice. But my ability to pacify that voice is way stronger than that negative self-talk voice could ever be, ever again. And so I tell you this truly personal story because I want you to know that in order to break free from these old beliefs, we have to consciously repattern our behavior. We need to consciously challenge and redirect how we think about ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, so we can create new, empowering thought patterns, actions, and standards that align with our true selves. So, I want to look at how we can identify and understand these patterns and what they are really pointing to underneath. So, let's break down 3 of the most common negative self-talk statements. And these are the ones that I had personally and hear from my clients and students on a regular basis. So, the first self-talk statement is, I'll never succeed. This can also sound like, I'll never lose weight. I'll never be able to control my cravings. I'll never be attractive enough for someone. This thought pattern often stems from a deep fear of failure and self-doubt, and it exists in our subconscious brain from a primitive urge to keep us safe by avoiding possibly edgy situations where we may have to try something new. But it can also severely hinder our potential for growth. The second statement is, I'll be stuck in dieting forever, right? So it can be like, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck in this forever. And this can also sound like, this is never going to work for me. I'll never get that job. No one will ever love me. I'll never fit into that dress. It's like future negativity. And this thought pattern is a deep-rooted sense of unworthiness, but also a protective mechanism from putting ourselves out there. Imposter syndrome robs us of collecting the life experience we need to grow, the sense of self necessary to believe in ourselves and actually break free from these negative self-narratives. And third, an extremely common self-talk statement is, I hate how I look. And this can also sound like deflecting compliments. Someone gives you a compliment, oh, you look amazing. Oh, no, I don't. Or, wow, that dress is amazing. Oh, yeah, I mean, something that, and then qualifying yourself, putting yourself down. Yeah, but I mean, I tried on this thing and everything looked bad on me, so I bought this dress. I don't know. I don't love it. right? Something super negative. And this pattern is self-criticism, and it's often the hardest to repattern because it is so in the moment. Usually this negative self-talk is an in the moment negative self-talk. And it's also the one usually buried deepest in the subconscious and can often be a mirror of how we were conversed with as children, how we observed others speaking to each other, or how we observed others speaking to themselves. So these three negative self-talk examples and their subsequent examples are unfortunately very familiar to us. But the thing about negative self-talk is, though it may not seem like it at its core, negative self-talk is actually something that can be reverse engineered to help us by acting as a window into our deepest desires. And recognizing this self-talk and then noticing what we say to ourselves and how it makes us feel is an amazing way to become more self-aware of what we're looking to change in our lives. So I like to say that self-talk, our self-talk, is the first layer of achieving our goals. It's the first layer of uncovering what our authentic goals are and how we can take the first step towards achieving them. So when we catch ourselves uttering phrases like, I'll never be able to succeed at this diet, it could really be an indicator of a deep yearning for change. So I'll never be able to succeed at this diet. It sounds like it's negative, but if we were to reverse engineer it, what it really is it actually is saying, I really want to succeed at this diet. I really want to succeed at this goal, right? It's I really want to succeed. There's a goal underneath that I want to get to. Whether that's a success and fulfillment at losing weight, or wanting to feel like food doesn't control your life, whether that, whatever that means for you, whether that is by you don't want food to control your life, whether that is giving into cravings and feeling guilty, or needing to analyze and calculate every morsel of food where there's no room to enjoy living. Those might be the goals you have. You might want to lose weight, and you just might want food not to control your life anymore, where you give into cravings and feel guilty, or you don't want food to control your life where you have to feel like you're analyzing and calculating everything you eat all the time. And there's no room for spontaneity, for flexibility, for just feeling like food is B-roll in your life and you can just enjoy it and let it go. So usually people come into my framework when they're in this place of I'll never be able to succeed at this. I had one client in particular who regularly would have these negative self-talk moments at certain stages of her journey. Ironically, it was often after she had a success milestone, like a vacation without overeating, or coming home from a stressful experience without a binge, or she even had like a weight loss success. She hit a weight loss milestone. And what we uncovered was that she so desperately wanted to succeed at achieving her goals that she put so much pressure on herself to be perfect, which led to self-doubt, which led to negative self-talk, which when we dug into it even deeper would lead to the self-sabotage that would be the evidence for her negative self-talk. All of that to say that the root cause of the negative self-talk was trying to protect her from the vulnerability of becoming this new version of herself and the growing pains that can bring. So that's why it's essential to view negative self-talk not as an insurmountable obstacle, but as a guide. So our thoughts, rather than holding us back, and our narratives, rather than holding us back, can provide such valuable insights into what we genuinely want. So if you find yourself identifying with any of the negative self-talk statements in your thought patterns that I've talked about today, I really invite you to consider these thoughts as a catalyst that is moving you towards actualizing your deepest goals and making those huge shifts in your life to become the more aligned version of you so that you can become that and embody that version of you that you desire and that you know lives inside of you. The key really lies in recognizing recognizing these thoughts without immediately believing them and acting on the feelings that they inspire within you or that they trigger within you, or trying to suppress them. So you want to see when you have a negative self-talk thought, you want to recognize that this is just a thought. And you want to be able to pause and almost be able to be with that negative self-talk thought without automatically believing it and acting on that negativity, and without trying to immediately feel like you have to suppress it. And instead, you want to step out of your emotional or reactive state and look objectively at how your self-talk, right? We want to try to see this as neutral, might point to your inner goals. And when you do that, you will realize that by understanding where you want to get to, you can turn negative self-talk into a positive first step on your journey, whatever that journey, specific, unique journey is for you. So, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to join me again next week with another new episode about emotional eating so you can fall in love with eating, start losing weight, and keep it off with sustainable strategies and lasting change. If you found this episode helpful, please share, subscribe, rate, review. I love being able to share this type of content with you. I feel so much closer to you listening to this. I love hearing all of your feedback. I have so many free resources on my website that can help you on your journey to loving food and losing weight. Just go to www.bewellbyak.com. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating.